Alright, so this is going to be a hype video for the semi-final of this tournament I've been holding, Triad Wars 2. We get Delial versus Turdz. I think this is one of the great matchups of Triple Triad history. So we're going to go through each of the times they've played each other. We're going to look at what the head-to-head record is, what their overall achievements are, and ask, who do you think's going to win? Because I think this is a great matchup, and I think this is a very competitive matchup, and you're going to see that in their head to head. I also believe they have faced, in my records, more times than any other pair of players have in official tournaments, and no one else was all that close. So this is possibly the most frequent matchup in Triple Triad tournament history, and you might think that makes it dull or something, but it really speaks to their achievement over time. If you lose in the first round of every tournament you play, in their 64-person tournaments, well, you have a 1 in 63 chance of facing any opponent a given time. But if you're consistently making it deep and other players are also consistently making it deep, you have a much better chance to have played a lot. But even then, players like Yojimbo and myself, we played 5 times in tournaments, or Yojimbo and Great Sephiroth is 4 times, or myself and Great Sephiroth is 3 times, or Delial and Seto, I think most people would consider the greatest rivalry in the history of Triple Triad Advance, is only 5 times. And this is going to blow those numbers out of the water. So the first time they faced was in 2007 in Balance of Power 1. I think this is the first of the TTN tournaments, but I don't actually have their order down. So it could be that the matchup we see next happened before this one. I'm not entirely sure. But Delial wins, and he goes on to win the tournament. So he takes a 1-0 lead in TTN and a 1-0 lead in the overall. We're going to keep track of how they do in specific formats, as well as how they do in the overall. Yes, we're going to use TTN here. If we cut the TTN games, we'd still have a lot of matchups between them, but we have even more if we include TTN, and I wanted to get as kind of full a view as possible. The second time they face is in the Price of Courage 1 semi-final, and here Turdz gets his revenge, beating Delial, though he loses in the finals, tying up the TTN 1-1 and the overall 1-1. In the Price of Courage 2 semi-final, they meet again. Turdz wins again to take a 2-1 lead, his first lead, and to lead in the head-to-head as well as TTN. This is the last time they ever played in TTN. They are the two most successful TTN players of all time, having won 7 tournaments there between them. But this was the last time they ever met there. So Turdz is the winner of the TTN portion 2-1, leads currently in the overall. And these were the only 2 times they will ever meet in a semifinal. So Turdz is our leader in semifinals. Is it predictive to have won when they exactly met in semifinals? Because they will be meeting in a semifinal again here. I don't think so, but it's fun trivia. So the first time they meet in a kind of standard tournament is in Rhinoa 1. This was before Rhinoa became a team tournament. The first 4 were just 1v1 normal tournaments, though often shorter than other tournaments were. They didn't have quite the signups. Anyway, Delial defeats Turdz, going on to tie the head-to-head and taking a 1-0 lead in standard, and we're all tied up. Who will take the next lead? Well, they don't play in 2008, and that was the end of their 2007 run. But I think it's neat that in 2008 they do tie for something, which is they tie for Player of the Year honors. So Turdz has his breakthrough, Vincent is right in the voters' minds, and they vote for Turdz off his victory in Vincent. And Delial has won his second tournament in Triad Wars 6. I list Irvine as a 2008 tournament because most of it was played in 2008, but he hadn't yet clinched the victory, though he may have already been in the finals. He was at least in the semis by the end of the year when voting happened. So overall, I do think Delial had the better year, but they both had fantastic years, and they tied for Player of the Year honors. So this rivalry even extends to who was winning awards. In 2009, they faced in round 4 of SID. This was a 7-round tournament. Round 4 would normally be the quarterfinals, but this was possibly the last 7-round tournament. I think Barrett might have been the last 7 rounds, so I think this was the second to last 7-round tournament the site had. Turdz wins to tie up the overall 1-1 and again reclaim the lead 3-2, but goes on to lose in the quarters to the eventual winner of Great Sephiroth. In 2010, they meet in the other 7-rounder in Barrett. Delial evens it up again, beating Turdz. No one's ever going to take a big lead in this matchup. Really is a good rivalry. To take a 2-1 lead in standard and a 3-3 tie overall. Goes on to lose in the next round to me. I don't make it much further. I lose to MC, I think, in the round after that. In the TTAC 8 quarterfinals, they play again. Turdz wins to even up the head-to-head again. Again, this matchup's so close, and take an overall lead 4-3. He later loses to Sujiro. This was the last standard tournament they faced in, so if you just want their standard head-to-head record, the open games they played, this is the last time it happened. Of course, TTAC mixes in closed, so you might say Delial wins 2-1 in completely standard matchups, but I'm going to call it 2-2, and Turdz again takes a 4-3 lead, and we now move into their closed matchups. Actually, first, they were paired in the Clan Wars 8 semifinals, where Wethril Odorim with Turdz defeated Deli's Avalanche, but Deli and Turdz never played their match. The rest of Avalanche fell before this game was completed, including myself, sadly. And that match was never played, but I did check the clan results to see if they ever paired up there, and as best as I can tell, they were only paired this one time. So then we start meeting in closed. So they meet in Titus Una round 3. I think this was the second of the 4 closed tournaments in 2014. Could have been 2013. I think it was 2014, though. Delial defeats Turdz to tie up the matchup again. Again, no one will ever have a lead bigger than a single game, and loses in the quarterfinals to Zoom. And so closed takes the 1-0 lead in... Delial takes the 1-0 lead in closed. And we now move on to our final matchup. We're tied 4-4. Who will have the overall lead coming into my tournament semifinals? And it is Delial. He wins in the finals. I think it's great that the last matchup they ever played was a finals. Sadly, a closed tournament, but closed is worth a lot, just not as relevant to them playing here now because it'll be an open game. But Delial defeats Turdz. He becomes the 4th and final winner of a closed tournament. So in the closed head-to-head, he leads 2-0. In the overall head-to-head, he takes a 5-4 lead, just a lead of 1. Turdz led or was tied most of the way, but Delial comes out with it at the end. Delial 2-0 in the closed, Turdz 2-1 in TTN, and in regular formats tied 2-2. This is 9 games played between them, which might not sound like much, but when you're in a field of 64 or 128 people, the odds of playing a single individual opponent is so low. And if your career is, 30 or 40 tournaments, as these players played, the odds of playing a single opponent multiple times, is not all that high, unless that opponent also was regularly going deep. And so what we see here is, I think, the most frequent matchup in Triple Triad history. I think by a decent margin, too. And we're finally going to get one of their games on the record. I'm really excited. And now we're going to talk about their current form. So Delial has gone 4-0 in my AI tournaments. Turdz is 8-1. What this means is whoever wins this match will have the better win percentage. Because if Turdz moves to 9-1 and Deli drops to 4-1, Turdz will be clearly ahead. While if Deli moves to 5-0 and Turdz drops to 8-2, Deli will be clearly ahead. Overall, Deli doesn't have a loss yet. But Turdz has a whole lot of wins and against good opponents. I think these are very comparable win percentages, and they have performed, I think, at a similar level in these tournaments. Deli has given up 4 ties on the way here, while Turdz has only given up 3, so Turdz has been slightly more efficient at winning rather than giving up ties. Delial was also in serious trouble multiple games in round 3. You can rewatch that video. That was incredibly scary for Delial, while Turdz has never really been in any real trouble, which is to speak to how well he has played the early game and how well he has done in the hand battles of who can get a hand advantage. I think Deli's had a tougher opponent on average. If you took each of their opponents each round and paired them up, Delial's opponents would win more rounds. But in this most recent round in the quarters, Turdz had the toughest opponent either of them have faced. I think Delial has played with a little more creativity, more kind of offbeat and surprising moves just from a structural perspective. But Turdz is also... It's not to say Turdz has been playing the basic moves. With cards in 1, 7, and 9, Turdz found an incredibly strong move in 6. And that's not really the first place most players look. Players often look to play in 5, or in the in-between squares in 4 and 8, and 6 is very much, and especially the way he played it, an advanced move to find how it works. And I think it was the best move in the position. This is not to say Turdz hasn't been creative, but I think Turdz has been a bit steadier, and Delial has been a bit more creative. Delial has been a bit slower, and Turdz has played more quickly. So I know Delial is the favorite coming into this matchup. Like we all know, Delial is arguably the most successful person in all of Triple Triad history, and you could argue it's not even all that close. I made that argument when I argued for him as GOAT in the video about Delial. Turdz is fantastic. I have him ranked 15th all time, but he is not in the GOAT conversation. He's clearly not. So I know Delial will seem to a lot of people to be the obvious favorite here. So I want to really emphasize where I think Turdz has his advantages. I think he has overall probably played better to this point, and I think he has done so taking less time per move. And given that we will enforce a strict time limit as they play each other, I think this may speak to Turdz having some clear advantage here. Turdz has generally stayed at 9 or 10 minutes or quicker, while Delial has run over that a fair few times. And maybe if he had played quicker, he would have made the same moves. But it is something that speaks to perhaps Turdz having an advantage here, is that he has played more quickly throughout, and we will be forcing them to stick to a time limit. Now, this may not amount to anything, but I do want to make the case that Turdz not only has a legitimate shot here, as you can see from their head-to-head, but you could even argue should be the pick for likely to win this match. How about form in the last Triple Triad advanced tournaments? You know, these were often 5 or more years ago, but we can still check how did they each look coming out of TTA. Delial's final tournament, excluding one where all his results were activity, so he didn't actually play, was that beating Turdz in the Onion Night finals. So Delial's last result was him winning a tournament. You know, can't be better form than that. But Turdz's recent form is really good too. He made the finals of that tournament against Delial. He made the semifinals of his next tournament, though he only played 2 games total in that tournament. This was very late in the site's history, so don't know how much credit to give that. And then in the very messy Carver, the final tournament on the site, he sort of wasn't part of the bracket, but played some side games and won all of them, and sort of qualified for the final, but sort of hasn't really played anyone yet. A very weird tournament. But this is to say, we can look at Turdz's last 3 tournaments. Every one of them, he made the semifinals or more. In 2 of them, he made the finals. He may have won Carver if that had ever been finished. Both these players in very good form at the end of TTA's life. What about their overall resumes? We can bring up their scorecards. Delial has won 4 majors, Turdz has won 1. Obviously, winning any majors is a huge achievement. That Delial has won 4, and he has won 3 different types. He's one of only 3 players to ever win a special edition, a Triad Wars, and a TTAC. He also has 2 minors. Might be considered slightly insulting to separate out the Team Rhinoas and the closed tournaments into minors, but honestly the reason I did it is because I couldn't fit all of Delial's success in a single line, and I wanted some reason to separate them. So 2 minors, Turdz is 0. Also 4 TTN championships, Turdz has won 3. This is the most and second most of all time. Overall, this gives Delial 10 championships. This is more than anyone. This is more than myself and Seto combined. This is more than Yojimbo. This is more than Yojimbo and Kamikaze combined. This is a crazy number. Actually, this is tied with Yojimbo and Kazi combined once we include TTN. But this is to say, this is a ton of championships. Turdz, on the other hand, has 4, which I think is tied to 4th, 7th most all time, though I didn't really check too much of TTN, but I think that gets it right. Vid moves up to 4, Turdz moves up to 4. These are 2 of our all-time winners. Head-to-head, we know Deli's 5-4 against Turdz. This is as close as it could be. You can't be closer over 9 games than a 5-4 advantage to one of them. If Turdz wins, that will tie it all up. If Deli wins, he'll take a 6-4 lead, which is, again, still very close. In semifinals exactly, Turdz is 2-2. He would move to 2-3 or 3-3 if we included the very later end tournaments, but those are such a mess. I said we'll just take, the tournaments that were kind of normal length tournaments and say he's 2-2. Delial, an incredible 6-1, only surpassed by a 6-0 when he makes the finals. Overall win rate, Delial was a little under 69.5, so I would normally round down to 69. But because he did so well at the end of the site and I haven't updated those numbers, I think he would be around 70-71% overall. Similarly, Turdz is like 60.6, so I would round it up to 61, but he might be up to 62 or 63 given a good end run to the site. I didn't update. It won't move them much. I am confident they'll be within a percent or two of this because they played so many tournaments. It's hard for a single good or bad result to move them much. So I would guess Deli is 70, maybe 71. I would guess Turdz is 61, maybe 62. For peak ELO rating, ELO, as I've talked about, adjusts for strength of opposition, adjusts for how long you played and what your win percentage was. And Delial has the 8th highest peak of all time. This may sound low to some people for someone who has won so many championships, but I would note at the time he held it, it was the second most of all time. And ELO inflates a little over time, and 6 of the 7 higher ratings came after him. Turdz, on the other hand, has the 21st highest rating of all time, but he tended to stay with a high rating longer than some of the people who had brief peaks going past him. And it is a very good peak, and, you know, if you swung it 20 points higher, that would jump up into, like, the top 15. So this is very much in the pack of people, not quite in that top group, but in the next group. In my all-time rankings, I said Delial is in the top 5 GOAT conversation. You could have him first, you could have him 5th, but he's there in that group. Turdz, on the other hand, is 15th in that second or third tier, probably third tier, but very firmly in that tier. These are two of the greats, and this is an awesome matchup to get to happen. I'm really excited for it. I'm curious who people have. I think the obvious favorite here is Delial, and Turdz is going to be seen as the underdog, but I'm really curious, who would you bet on if this was 50-50 odds? You know, if you were betting $10 to either get 20 total or go down to 0, you know, who would you bet on? And what if you were given odds? What if it was, what if you were given 2-1 odds on Deli? So you bet 10, and if Deli wins, you win 15 total, while if Turdz wins, you get 30 total. You know, something like that. Would you bet on Deli there, or would you start to bet on Turdz? What if it was 60-40? You know, bet 10 on Deli, win 16.7 back. Bet 10 on Turdz, win back 20 total, 20 profit. You know, stuff like that. I wonder what people think the percentage is here. I really don't know. I think there is a case that Turdz, you should actually take it 50-50 odds. I think he has played faster. I think you can look at the games they've played and argue he has played more steadily in a higher level of play. I think you can look at Delial's play this tournament and say he's defended some horrible positions, had to show some real genius to survive and to make it here, and showed some real genius in his wins too, and that overall his resume makes him the favorite here. I would love to know who you'd take and what you think the odds are. Do you think someone's 60-40 favorite? Do you think it's like 51-49? Do you think actually no, it's like, you know, 70-30 or 80-20? If you have takes, I'd love to see them. I don't think anyone here will get offended. I think Turdz would happily accept that most people will consider Delial favorite. I think Delial is the most humble person on the planet, will possibly consider himself the underdog and will not mind if you do as well. So I'd love to hear people's opinions. I'm really excited to see how they play against each other. The head-to-head is so close. We'll probably get matchups, maybe one coming out every week or two, so if they keep tying, this matchup could really extend a long time. I think I will make videos about the games, but I'll probably describe the moves, like what I think their reasoning is, rather than evaluating if that reasoning is any good, because I don't want to influence the games. If they want to look back and study their games, I love giving them a resource to do so, but I don't want my opinions to affect what they're doing. So I'll mention, you know, stuff about what's happening and why I think they're making the moves they're making, what I think some of the reasoning is, but not delve into, do I think they've made good hand decisions, or talk too much about the first move or two, because those are moves we might see repeated as the match goes on. So I think that will be a fair way to show the match. I'm so excited. I'm so glad we got a human versus human match here. I just want records of games that we can look back on and make retrospective analysis of these games later. So I might do really quick analyses of these here, but once the match is completed, go back and do deeper dives later into what they're doing. And I hope you're excited too. And I'd love to hear who you think is going to win this matchup, because it's going to be such a good matchup. If it's decided in a game or two, it's going to be because someone really figured something out. If it goes a while, that's going to be even better. So, who you got?